All right. It is buffering. It is moving. We are grooving. Cool. We are live.
Woo.
Welcome, Tim and Kelsey. How are you guys doing?
Good. How you doing?
Good to be here.
Good. Thank you very much. I'm happy you guys have made some time in your crazy schedules out there.
It's good to have Wi-Fi,
Yeah.
Right? We'll get into what the heck you guys have been up to here in a little bit. But I wanted to give you guys a little introduction to the channel and so people can learn about you. And then we can move into some questions.
Cool.
Tim and Kelsey are just two ordinary people living extraordinary lives. From quitting their day jobs, selling everything, and building an amazing 1995 FZJ80 named Goose, they are now living out of Goose and traveling around South America, but now they're back in the States due to this virus. And Goose is back as well, right?
Yep.
Yeah, good. If you want to continue on their journey, because I'm sure they're going to be going back down there shortly, make sure to follow along with them on Dirt Sunrise on YouTube and on Instagram. Tim and Kelsey, welcome to SnailShop Talk. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Doing
Thank
good.
you. It's exciting to be here.
Yeah.
And we already kind of went over this, huh? But oh well. So tell us a little bit about you guys. Where in the world are you? I know that you've been traveling all over the world, but I know you came back to the States. So whereabouts are you?
We're outside of Tucson, Arizona, staying with some family. So we just got here yesterday. And so this is perfect timing. We haven't had reliable Wi-Fi in more than a month at least.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, we got back in the United States right about when coronavirus was kind of becoming a big thing. And
just in time for everything to go into lockdown, basically.
Yep.
And
okay.
So,
middle of March-ish?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think about March 15th or something like that.
Yeah, I think it was, And so we were lucky to make it back. Our flights and stuff were some of the last ones to get in the States. And then we were just waiting on our truck, Goose. And then when he arrived in Houston, there was all this trouble with the paperwork, and we couldn't fly out and handle it because Texas said if you're flying from California, we're not letting you come in without a quarantine for 15 days. We're like, okay. So we had to do everything remotely. So it was days on the phone, finding a new agent on this end to correct all the problems that the agent caused on that end. And then, but then we got Goose on a shipping truck and got him out to California. And then all the work we were going to be planning on doing, we had events, we had military training lined up. We had some trips we were going to lead in Mexico. And then, of course, Overland Expos, and then all the Overland rallies. Anything a group event was all canceled. All the training even is canceled.
All gone.
And so we were just calling around looking for old jobs, all the side jobs we did to help save for this trip. And one of them hit. And so we all of a sudden just hopped in Goose after like a little tune-up is about all we had time to do.
We had to rush to get everything clean and everything kind of the way we wanted it and head back out. So.
Yeah, and then we head up to Oregon. So we've been in Oregon for the last month and a half and then just drove back down here. So it's been crazy.
Yeah, that sounds like it. I don't know if you knew it, but I was down in Antarctica for the month of February. And I barely got back for the most part as well, flying back. And I came back in late February, so I was a little bit in front of that curve. But we were kind of jumping back as fast as we kind of could as well. So
there
was talks about definitely. So how has the coronavirus changed? Were you guys planning on coming back originally, or did that change what was happening for your trip and your travel?
It changed it, but not a ton. So where we were at was looking at how much money we had left and then deciding, should we go up into Brazil more? So we had kind of done the loop to the tip, back up.
Okay.
A lot of zigzagging really too.
Mm-hmm.
And then we really loved Brazil. And then we wanted to go up and see some more. And so it was kind of like weighing our options. Can we afford it? And when this started happening, it was like, oh, well, that solves that. Let's head home. And so, there was less cases down there, at least while we were there. So that was nice. But then it flip-flopped and they went to really strict lockdown. So we've got friends down there in Buenos Aires. If you haven't heard of Impact Overland, check them out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's two brothers that are doing this trip. One's a quadriplegic and the other one's able-bodied, and they're basically stuck in an
Oh,
Airbnb
channel,
in town. So it's pretty
Sorry,
crazy.
back. It's on SnailShop. Okay, cool. Sorry, I was confused. I was confusing myself. I thought I was on the wrong channel. I have 2 YouTube channels.
Yeah, that would be.
And I was like, oh no, I think I'm on the wrong one. But no, it connected correctly.
Cool.
So you guys liked Brazil. I have a few friends that are actually down in that area.
Yeah.
Do you either of you guys speak Portuguese?
No.
No.
Which
Is it something you guys were picking up?
If we had stayed there more time, for sure.
Yeah, but it's so different. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, they talk about the sentence structure and all that being similar to Spanish, but in terms of the pronunciation and the accents, and we were mostly in the sort of inland area, Amazon and all that. And so you've got like country accents on top of being Portuguese. So to me, it sounded like it sounded nothing like anything I'd ever heard. And so we were just basically speaking Spanish and apologizing and saying no falo português, and you know, and just I'm sorry, I don't speak Portuguese.
Yeah.
And then you'd say something in Spanish and they would get it and they would go, I'd rather you speak Portuguese, but hey, no worries, I know what you mean. And like everyone was so nice. We'd have people, I can't remember stopping at a stoplight without somebody honking and being like, welcome to Brazil.
Do you like it? You know,
do you like it? Where are you from? And like we're going, geez, everywhere. So
yeah,
as much as we had heard cautionary things about the coast and some of the cities there, the inland was just amazing and was wonderful.
Oh, that's great. I've actually heard really good things about Brazil. I mean, like, you know, São Paulo, you know, and some of the major cities, you know, you got to be careful in almost any major city while you're traveling around the world, you know, but I've heard really positive things about Brazil. So I'm glad you guys got to go there. That's one of the places that eventually I want to go as well.
Yeah.
I feel like it's, you know, what we did in Brazil was like, maybe doing a loop around Utah or something and saying you saw the United States, you know? So it's like, we need to go back and we want to see so much more. But it was really good timing because here when we got home, you got to wear a mask, but the supermarkets, to us anyways, compared to what we had gotten used to, were filled with food. I mean, just every tomato looks perfect. None of them are moldy, you know, and there's a pile, like a pyramid of them. And so when we were in San Clemente, it just seemed easy. Even though I know it was harder than normal for here, it was so much easier than being in South America. So we felt like we made the right choice. And then our friends who are stuck, we have friends stuck in a parking lot in Honduras and some in Ecuador, and then these guys in Buenos Aires. And you go, all right, they haven't moved in 3 months now. I'm really stoked we came home.
Yeah, and we had already really made the plans to come home, so it really only pushed us up maybe 3 weeks that we decided, okay, we need to like actually go now instead of waiting. So.
Yeah, we could have gotten stuck then.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I have a friend who was down in Ecuador for a while and he was stuck there and couldn't move, and he's back in LA now. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. So let's jump back a little bit farther. Let's talk about who you guys are. Let's talk about how you two met. You know, maybe give us a little bit of the backstory.
My dad's waving. he's dancing over there.
Yeah.
So
tell him hi.
So I grew up in like San Juan Capistrano in Southern California. And for me, when I was a kid, I was obsessed with desert racing and pre-runners. And that was just the culture of that little area in like the late 90s. And so that's what I was all about. And so, you know, we'd go out and watch races, and all my first trucks were all about trying to get wheel travel and like, you know, all that. And out of college, I went and worked for what is now Icon Vehicle Dynamics, but back then it was called Donahoe Racing. We still built race trucks and all that. And I was building the shocks there and stuff and tuning them. And it was like, that's what it was all about. Total chaos and all that. And so then I built a Tacoma up and all that. And it was at the Tacoma where we're pre-running in Baja a lot, because we also built a race car and started racing. Where you couldn't make it up certain hills and somebody would tow you up a hill. And I went, why don't I have 4-wheel drive? And then that really ticked off, probably 2002 or something like that, ticked off from there forward, 4-wheel drive. Still wanting to go quickly, but 4-wheel drive. And it just, the trips got longer and longer, and, you know,
Yeah. And then for me, I grew up in northern Arizona, a small town there. And my obsession was horses. So I always loved getting out that way. And then about college, I was working at a coffee shop, and I ended up, you know, Overland Journal was near where I worked, and so I'd see them come in to get coffee in these crazy trucks, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. Like, what do you do? And one night, Chris Collard, who was the editor at the time, came in, and I was just talking to him, and he was showing me pictures of a trip that he had just done in Africa, and my mind was absolutely blown that like this guy sitting in front of me, talking with me, went and took these like National Geographic photos. And so it got my mind going, and I sent him an email, and I was like, you probably don't remember me. You were talking to me the other night, and I'm super interested in what you guys do. I like, I'll sweep floors. I'll do it for free. I just want to like know what you guys do. And so that turned into getting a job there eventually, which, got me a lot of travel experience, let me know a lot of people in the industry. And I was running Overland Journal's booth at Overland Expo, and Tim was teaching there. And that's where we first noticed each other.
Okay.
Yeah. And then a few years later, we actually met at Paul May's
Paul May and
party.
Mario's little party they do every Saturday night. And neither of us ever went to it ever, because it was like, I don't know, we're a little bit introverted despite having a YouTube channel. And so we went to that party. I don't know if both of us were thinking hopefully the other one would be there, but that's when we actually finally met. And then from then on, it was just like, a month or two after we met, we're like, let's go for a week and a half in Baja. And that was like our second date. So,
It's a hell of a second date.
Yeah, well, it was like lighting it on fire. I was like, this is either going to burn to the ground or it's going to be fine.
Make it or break.
Yeah. And did you take a race truck down there?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
For that one, we took Goose, the Land Cruiser, pre-cutting off his roof and stuff.
Definitely.
But yeah.
So Tim, do you know Dylan at Icon?
Devin? Yeah.
Yeah, friend of a friend in a way. So.
Right on.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
He was kind of more on the rock crawling side back then with his Toyota, and was like learning how to valve shocks and do all that from Craig, the guy who started Donahoe, and a lot of the other desert racing guys. And then I came in after he'd been there a short time and was just learning all the same stuff, trying to figure it out and stuff. But,
got it. Yeah. No, that's fun. Small world, isn't it?
I know,
Yeah,
right?
it really is.
Yeah, especially down there in Orange County.
Yeah.
So I've got some good friends that actually live in San Clemente. So.
Oh, right on.
That's awesome. So did you guys go out to, or have you been out to Glamis, and did you go out to Ocotillo Wells and all the fun, fast areas out there?
Yeah, that was it. Like, any holiday, Thanksgiving, Halloween, New Year's, that's where we'd be for all of that. And whether it was dirt bikes we were into at the time or trying to jump our trucks and ruin them, like that's what it was all about. And then it wasn't until I moved to Arizona in like 99 for college, and then met a guy at a fabrication shop, and I was doing a finance degree, but I kind of hated it. So I wanted to work at a fab shop and get my hours for like accounting and finance. And so I was like doing the accounting of a fabrication shop. And then that's when the guy, it was a desert racing, shop in Tucson. And so we built our first race car together over like after hours. And then that's when we really actually started racing.
Ah, cool. Yeah, I've still, with Ultra 4 going on and just any of the Baja stuff, I need to get myself into one of those cars sometime.
Absolutely.
I'm definitely a rock crawler at heart, but I mean, just to experience jumping into a right seat in one of those would be so much fun.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I know we talk about like, it'll take over your life, but I was like, maybe a few friends will just get a class 11, a stock Baja Bug, and just beat ourselves up in one of those.
That's been a goal of mine too, to go do the Baja 500 or the 1000 in a class 11. Cool. It's like just a bone stock Bug, with maybe a few little upgrades that you can do to it, and then just go. But even the price of entry on that is expensive.
It's crazy. I know. And that's why for us back in the day, it was like the Baja 500 was usually our big race of the year. And it would just take everything you had, everything everyone had to do it. And we've done 1,000 a few times with Donahoe and then ourselves, but it's so expensive. We started racing the Mexican series, the Mexican base series. Okay. And then there's some in Sonora, Mexico, that state just south of Arizona. And that's where we'd go for most of our racing. And it was still expensive, of course, but it was like a third or a fourth of the price of Score.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Nice. So let's move. So does the FJ40 have a name?
Yeah, I know everything's got a name. So the FJ40 is Tonto. And Tonto Rockford.
Yeah,
I don't know.
we couldn't agree on the name. I wanted to call it Rockford, and he wanted to
I think
call it
Rockford's
Tonto.
good though too. I don't know why Tonto. I know it's not actually in reference to like the old Western TV show, but Tonto seemed like a horse that had two colors in my mind somehow. And he's a mustard FJ40 that somebody resprayed in that desert tan back in the 80s,
Okay.
and then with a red top that came from like the Midwest, and so it
And
makes
red
no
doors,
sense.
so
And
it's
red
like
doors,
all
Yeah.
mismatched.
So did you have Goose or Tonto first?
Goose. So I had a
Goose.
third gen Forerunner after the Tacoma and the long travel years. I got a third gen Forerunner, and then that's the one that kind of was going more towards rock crawling. I wouldn't claim that I was rock crawling though, but it was all about gearing and bigger tires, and then cutting that thing up and cutting it more and more. So, and then I had buddies who had, true rock buggies, and we'd go out and do trails in Arizona, and I loved it. But I just realized that for an everything vehicle, one to take me to work, I better like pump the brakes. And then that I had for like 8 years or something, and loved that thing. Slept on the inside of it. I worked for Overland Journal right when they'd started and stuff, and just couldn't get into the rooftop tents and anything that messed up the handling of it. I still wanted to be able to slide around the corner,
Yeah.
And then eventually sold that, and then got Goose. And then after we had met, we were looking. I'm always looking at cars. You're probably like everyone else, trucks, cars, motorcycles. You're just always looking at Craigslist. And she was the one that encouraged me, like when we saw this 40, and it was basically sitting in an old dirt landing airstrip out in the desert, like 200 miles from here. And there was, I don't know, 4 or 5 mice living in it.
Yeah, there were like baby mice all in there, and it was pretty disgusting.
So messed up wiring.
Yeah, it wasn't bad, but yeah, like
they definitely chewed on it.
Yeah. Like, but there's so few wires on an FJ40. It was like, hey, one of these isn't here. Reconnect it. Hey, the horn works. Cool. So it wasn't too bad, but we went and saw it on a Saturday, and when we left, we were like, yeah, we got to buy it. Like, so that was probably 2016 or something like that.
Probably, yeah.
Something like that.
Cool. So Kelsey, when did your session come with cars on your end? Do you have it, or is it just strictly horses, or are you obsessed as much as all of us guys are?
I can't compete quite with Tim, but yeah, I was into all of it before I met Tim, and I went through my fair share of trucks, kind of learning and figuring out what I wanted. So I think the first real car that I got specifically for off-roading, I bought a super cheap, not very nice 85 Toyota pickup, and I was like, it's like Back to the Future, it's the most awesome thing ever. And it was beat. And so I realized, like, it's gonna take a lot of money. So I had that for a little while and gave it to my brother, and then I ended up with a Nissan Xterra, and then from there I pretty much had met Tim. And during that time, luckily I worked for Overland Journal, so I got to have constant vehicles, testing and driving, and so I got to kind of know what I liked. And so I'm totally into vehicles, but I'm not as into it as Tim.
Yeah, I think there's a few of us are this way, where we almost just can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah,
exactly. Exactly. Always shopping.
So tell me about Goose, which is the main, the third wheel of your guys' adventure.
Yeah.
And you've done so much to it, and I was trying to find like a video just to like highlight like a snip of like what you guys do, but it's impossible to cover.
It's so tough. Yeah, we have 2 walkthrough videos, but then even those, somebody was like, hey, I thought you had like, I don't know, something, diff breathers, and you're like, oh, well, yeah, there's always a little thing that you don't remember to talk about. But it's just one of those things where I bought it, probably about 10 years ago, and I found a guy who actually had a website. He documented every maintenance thing he had done to it, every modification he had done. And he wasn't a big off-roader. He was more of a dirt roader. And so he had the sleeve front bumper, was one of the first ones of those short bus bumpers. It had, I'm trying to think what else. Just some mud terrain tires and a little like Old Manimoo lift, and that was about it. But then
it had tin. It had like aluminum foil wrapping around its air intake.
Yeah, so the whole it looked like a spaceship. You pop the hood, and the whole intake, air filter housing, up to the throttle body, all was covered in this aluminum, like not foil, but it was like that. It was heat wrap or whatever. And he was trying to lower intake temperatures, and so he did. He got it a little bit lower, like 2 degrees or something. but good guy. But
he was super nerdy. Like he loved wiring things. So
yeah.
I mean, when we pulled the headliner out to, you know, cut the roof off, it was like we found these wires that were running through, and you were just like, God, he wanted like lights everywhere, and he was just super into all the little details.
He had wired into all the factory housing. So like the tail lights and the corner lights up front, he had wired in strobes. So if he pulled off to the side of the road, he could like be really noticed, you know. So some of it was frustrating, but some of it was good where you went. I know that our truck has a Toyota Sequoia alternator because it was twice as big as the original 80 series. And I know what bracket he used to mount it. And I know like all these little things was nice. And I can still reference his website, which is cool. But it was one of those that you went, oh, I wish I would have just gotten a little old ladies one and started from scratch. So, you know, for me, I always wanted to keep it as capable as I could without starting to hack it up too much. And so I've always preferred the ARB lockers. The Toyota ones were great, but you know, when you wheel with a buddy, I'm sure you've done this plenty of times where you go up to an obstacle and they're down there, forward, back, click. All right, I got my lockers in, and you're already at the top because, you know, you just lock them. Even if halfway up the hill you need to unlock them, you can make a turn. And as long as you're okay with fighting any air leaks that pop up, then, you know, I really like that. So I looked for an 80 without lockers, and then put in the ARBs. We're lucky we have a guy named Zook in Phoenix who's pretty legendary for setting up gears. So had him set up the gears, went to 456s, and I don't know, just kept it this middle ground truck where, and then with Icon, they were still at the time, you know, enough friends were still there to get like employee pricing because I used to work there. We got the really fancy shocks, and they had some big 2.5 inch, you know, compression adjustable shocks. So it was kind of set up for this middle of the road where I wanted to go fast when I want to go fast and still never not be able to do a trail short of real rock crawling, you know.
And we had kind of set it up like interior wise for, you know, living in it for maybe a week or two at the most. So we just had a flat, like platform. We had drawers in the back and then a platform and the fridge. And that was kind of our setup. Everything lived underneath the bed basically.
But it was easy.
Take the back seats out?
Yeah. Took the third row seats and just got rid of them. And then the back seats we just kept out and never really put them in. Once we had that set up in there, it was just so easy to leave it.
And then at one point we did a roof rack and like the 360-degree awning, which we liked. But again, we cut the roof off, so we kind of.
Yeah, that was tough. So before the trip, you know, I always wanted to leave the roof clean. I don't like that weight up there. But before the trip, we realized you're going to be outside whether you like it or not. And there weren't, you know, there was only 7 of these Camp Tech pop tops. So the chances we were going to find one was 0. So we bought a front runner roof rack and did one of those big awnings. And that was going to be our outdoor space. And if we had to carry stuff up top, we could. And then we just put the word out there, and a guy reached out to us and said he was up in Canmore, Canada, and that he's got one and his truck's rusty and he's junking the truck, but the Camp Tech's okay. And the next weekend we were, you know, in January, just hauling for Canada. And in the middle of winter, freezing our butts off, we just cut the roof off our truck, and we're just terrified. It was the dumbest thing we'd ever done.
Right.
And you know, when you look at the side of Sikaflex, it says, because that's the only thing that holds our top on. There's no screws or anything. And so when you look at the side, it says 6 days to cure. And it's like, it was like -5, -6.
Yeah, it's like in like 70 degrees. And we're like, well, okay.
Yeah. So the whole way home, we were just waiting for the top to
fly away. Yeah, I watched that video, and I'll put a link to that part 1 of that video down below for sure. And right as you guys were making the first cut, when you were making that first cut, Tim, you know, and Kelsey's narrating over the top about how nervous she is and everything going on, I could tell there was a point when you hopped down and you guys looked at each other and you're like, what the fuck did we just do?
For sure.
And, you know, and you guys just started giggling to each other, and that's really about all you can do in that point. You're like, well, we're cutting the top off of it.
Yeah, we've gone too far already.
There's no going back. So can't get upset about it.
No, definitely. So that part was hilarious. I started laughing out loud on this end because I know exactly, like, you know, in the off-roading world, we cut off everything. You know, it's like, I'm used to cutting fenders away, and I'm used to cutting all these things. And now I'll get a person that's new inside, you know, new to the community, and comes in. I'm like, okay, we got to cut this, you know, like I've got to hit that with a big old hammer against your firewall. So it like dents it in 3 inches so you can clear your tires. And they're like, no, like, you can't do that. And I'm like, no, but that's how we're going to fit tires in there.
Yeah.
You know? And it's something I'm used to, but you know, it's like when the first time you're doing it, it's just, it's shocking.
It is. And I think like for me, you know, when you're banging down like a pinch weld to get, you know, tires to clearance, or you're gonna even cut like a body mount and then re-weld it or something. I always thought, if I were to sell this, it's not even noticeable. It'll be fine. And there was something about, truly cutting a fender, or for us, just cutting the most structurally important part of the truck and just tossing it in the trash was just terrifying.
Yeah.
Well, you left it there.
Yeah, it's in Canada.
You left it with the guy. Well, that guy was super generous.
Oh man, yeah.
Super generous. So, you know, it's one of those things where he wanted to sell it, and then he said, you know what, I can't sell it. And I was like, all right, I get it. And so that's actually when we bought the roof rack and the awning. And we went, look, we'll at least we can get the sidewalls for that alu cab awning. We'll have outdoor space. It's not as good as a pop top, but it's fine. And then he calls me back, this is months later, and says, you know, I think I will sell it. And I was like, I'm on my way. And he's like, what do you mean? It's, you know, I think it was a 32-hour drive or something like that. And I was like, we're on our way this coming weekend.
We still both had jobs. So like on the drive there, I'm like on conference calls, and like we kept switching off driving so that he could be on a conference call. And like, it was not the smartest.
No, that was, I think, you know, people are like, oh, was the trip in South America or Central America dangerous? And I think the most dangerous thing we've done in the last 2.5 years was that drive, because it was all out and no stops, and it was snowing, and it was so cold the truck could barely keep the engine temperature up at operating temperature. It was crazy. And the pushing ourselves that hard for that many hours, then cutting the roof off, then putting, you know, and then just turning around. Like, he's like, well, we've worked together for, you know, 18 hours. You want to get some breakfast? I was like, yes, a lot, but I don't have time. And we just left. Can't wait to go back and see him someday.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, right. That's cool. So so now you have the pop top on there. You have like an entire cabinet system in the back with like airport rails on the inside that hangs bags, and a water tank on the passenger side, and a spot for propane, and your stove. What is the next thing you want to do to Goose?
You know, it was one of those things where it was like, it all looked great. And this isn't a reflection on him or anything, but everything needed to be redone. So when we got home, we pulled off that front main hinge. We had to re-sew a lot of the fabric. All of the mosquito netting was brittle and would break in your hand. So we had to redo all that. The insulation on the roof had to be redone. The headliner had to be redone. There was no latch down straps on the sides that held the pop top in place. So I went off-roading. I went to Death Valley with my brother, and every bump off-road, every whoop-de-doo was just bump, 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 bump. So then I realized why the hinge had probably blown out before, is because it was constantly going up and torquing side to side a little. So there was
so you put JK latches on to hold it down.
Yeah.
Is that the only Jeep part on that?
Yeah. It's the only Jeep part on it, and they failed. So, you know, it's as you'd expect. No, But no, that was one of those where that's what the part, I guess, that Eric at Camp Tech had used on the later models. And I was like, all right, I'm not re-engineering anything here. Let's just go with those. But so we had a ton to do. So we redid tons of stuff. We had to weld all the holes on the front of the truck close on the front of the pop top. While welding them, my buddy's kid was supposed to be the bucket brigade to keep it cool, and he was on his phone or something like that. And so the truck lit on fire. So I heard fire, and I came running in, and the pop top's open, and the entire inside is on fire, and it's climbing because there was insulation up there to keep the heat of the sun out. So the truck is looking like it's going to burn down to the ground. And so I just hopped in with a bucket, and I'm just throwing water up. And I had a baseball cap on, thankfully, because my baseball cap was just covered in melted black plastic. And my arms got a bunch of burns and stuff. But we got the truck out, and it felt like every time we did something on that truck closer to the leaving date, something happened that set us back. I blew the transmission in the truck, which on an 80 is crazy rare. And everyone says it doesn't happen. Well, of course, you know, like 3 weeks to go, I blew the transmission, and our old FJ40 towed Goose down, and we picked up a transmission from a junkyard, put it in, and it's still in there, and it's doing great. But it was tough. So it was a lot of little things we had to redo. That whole interior we modified and messed with to make it suit us better.
It was hard because we had put a date on the calendar when we were leaving, and then we at kind of last minute ended up doing all, you know, cutting the roof off and making these changes, and then, you know, set it on fire and the transmission went. And so you just kept having these issues. And so we never really got to live or camp for very long in the truck before actually leaving on the trip. So we didn't know like where stuff should go, or was it easier to have it here, or should we change this or that, because we hadn't lived in it. So I mean, it all worked out pretty well. I think the only thing that I would change now for the trip, it's actually not been bad in the US, but is having the ability to sleep down below, having something that comes together so that you can sleep down there, because there were times where we just, you couldn't find a campsite, or in Patagonia it was super windy, and popping the top just wasn't a safe option.
Right.
So
yeah, I mean, I have a rooftop tent on the back of my Tacoma, and I'll move it to my crawler sometimes. And it's like, there'll be times when it's like, oh, I could camp at like in front of my buddy's house, but I don't really want to throw the tent up. It's like, you're just signaling that like, oh, I'm just sleeping in this area, it could be a bad sign, especially if you're not in the best of area. Yeah. So I could see how you could have like, oh, here's the comfort mode when the roof is up, and then we could have the incognito mode in another area. So I could definitely see that. But I know so Kelsey, when the fire hit and you had to re-sew some of that, some of the canopy and some of the sides, and you sewed some of the like the mosquito netting in and stuff like that. Did you know how to sew before all this?
Not really. No, I had sewn maybe like a pillowcase, or nothing fancy.
Some PJ pants.
So I just had to figure it out. I knew that we needed a like heavy duty sewing machine because of the fabric that we were dealing with. So when we knew when we bought it that we had to sew in new windows and stuff, I went on Amazon and researched like, okay, what is like the least expensive but heavy duty one sewing machine, and then just kind of rolled with it from there. It's not the most beautiful sewing, but it works.
It works.
If it keeps the mosquitoes out, it works.
Exactly. Yeah.
Those pesky little buggers.
Yeah, it wouldn't keep the little no-see-ums, unfortunately. So you have to choose your mosquito netting. If you go too small, there's no airflow, so it's not that nice in the hot environments. And so we went with the size that keeps all mosquitoes out and most any bug. But these little no-see-ums, we woke up in the middle of the night in the jungle feeling like your whole body's itching, and you're like, I think I'm just itchy. And then, later that next day, your whole body's covered in red bumps and all these little things were on you. And so you can't win. I mean, it's like, something's going to happen one way or the other. So
definitely. I've never heard of those guys. Is it particular down to South America? Are they, or a specific area down there?
Definitely jungly. I think we have them in the US, like sandflies, maybe they call them, but they're just teeny tiny little like flies, and you don't really feel them biting you because I think they have like something that they spit on you that like numbs it, and then they bite you, and then you like look down and you have little spots of like blood, and you're like, dang it, they've been biting me. So
got it.
But yeah, definitely jungle areas. Don't know about here.
Yeah, I know. It's one of those animals that you just kind of went like, why? Why do you have to exist? You
don't do anything good.
Yeah. Well, they feed something, right?
I'm sure, right? They're always a link somehow, an annoying link in the food chain.
Yes, definitely. So our journey overland asked if you two have any plans on trading in Goose.
Hey to those guys, by the way, because we sometimes talk to them. They're awesome. Yes and no. It's like I feel like for Toyota, the 80 series, for what I do and how we like to travel, is the sweet spot. It's old school enough that I work on it. We do everything ourselves. It's short of like boring out cylinders. I just don't have the tools for that. So that we can have someone else do. But we can do everything ourselves. He's capable enough that we can do as hard a trail as I want to do. So I really do like 80s. But if I were to swap him out, there's a few things. Like if we're now we've lived in Goose, parents just brought drinks. That was nice. So I would say yes, there's a possibility, because it's a home, it's a rolling home, and keeping such a small truck with such a small area up top, I mean, we're shoulder to shoulder in a Camp Tech. They are not spacious. They're smaller than a double bed. Quite a bit smaller actually. And so we could see the slide-in campers in trucks and things like that, as long as I could remove it and still do some harder trails. The 70 series, of course, a lot of people love Troopies. I've loved them since I realized they existed when I was a kid. And, so something like that's more space, but it's obviously less capable. I think we could do that because it becomes more of a home then. And I still want a wheel, But, the sliding scale leans that way. If we're going to stay home here in the US and, teach and work more, then I love the 80 and it's great. So
the answer is we have no idea, because
Yeah.
we're constantly
honestly,
talking about like, what if we did this? What if we had this? What if we go here? We can
Yeah.
do this, this, and this. And so
Oh,
it's
sure.
like,
Yeah. Or we
It
can
depends.
change it this way and it'll better
Yeah.
fit us in for
Exactly.
these things. Oh,
It
yeah.
depends where we go next too, because some
Mhm.
countries have such strict import laws that if we went there, it wouldn't be worth taking Goose. The cost to get them there, and then the import laws are so strict that if they find a speck of dust, they can reject it. And it's happened to people we know.
he's very
Mhm.
dusty.
And so, and not just dust, but little nooks and crannies. There's stuff everywhere. So it depends. I think for the U.S., an 80 series is just fantastic. But
Baja, perfect.
yeah, he's great in Baja. The setup that he is great in Baja. But then, if we were to go like the Road of Bones through Russia or something, he's not good in cold weather. I mean, he's just a little
Mhm.
tent material between you and the outside. So again, sleeping down below, having a diesel or some sort of heater. So there's a lot of little changes we could make. I think the one thing that neither of us are ready to do is go super big. So like a super big truck that loses a lot of the off-road capability, that right now doesn't hold any interest to us. The
Mhm.
only situation a van or any of that holds interest is then there's got to be 2 dirt bikes and our 2 mountain bikes in the back. So you've got, okay, we're in Moab. We still have some toys here to go explore the
Sure.
gnarly stuff. Yeah.
Nice. I could see it. Yeah. I already see your mind running in different
Yeah.
directions.
All day,
So-
man. I send her photos and I'll just show her the laptop and I'll be like, so alternate world, here's our 4-wheel drive van. And then we have 2 dirt bikes in the back and the mountain bikes sit just above it and blah, blah, blah.
No, definitely. So, but you did bring up an interesting thing I wanted to talk about, which was border crossings.
Yeah.
And you guys have done how many countries now in the rig?
I don't know.
I haven't actually counted, but I'd say over 15.
Yeah, it's somewhere
15.
around 20, but then some countries like Argentina, we must have gone out
Back and forth,
into
back
and
and
out of
forth.
Argentina like 6 times because we were, Bolivia in, back, Brazil in and out, Uruguay in and out, Chile, so some
Yeah.
of we did a lot, and
Mhm.
each border crossing is different. You would think the country just has their rules and those are the rules, but really a small border crossing, you kind of check iOverlander and they'll say this one's a pain. They will check everything. They'll throw out every ounce of food, even a bag of chips. And then the next border crossing, they'll say, oh, these guards are cool. They didn't even, they just waved us through and had us sign this piece of paper. So even the same country can vary wildly.
Got it. So is that one of the main tricks is check out Overlander? Was that what you said?
Yeah, iOverlander, and it's an app on your phone. And it's actually, what's funny, it's even working in the US a little bit. I think when we started the trip, we were a little bit down on iOverlander as an app because everyone can post stuff. And so when you see people say great remote campsite and you don't know what they're traveling in, and then you realize it's literally a pullout on the side of the main highway. And well, they were probably in a full-on RV or a school bus or, something that made that seem good. And then a mountain bike traveler or a bicycle traveler will post something off in a field and it's like, I can't even get to the field. So there's negatives to it. And we didn't want to do someone else's trip. We didn't want to, mimic someone else's trip. We wanted to randomly find stuff. So
it was really helpful for like towns, like if you needed to find propane, somebody had already kind of talked to everyone in town and found, oh, this place can do it, or a campsite in a town where you're like, what's the best place to stay?
Reviews of sites to stay at and things like that are formal. For remote camping, we always found we found something better on our own. But then having a backup, like in certain areas of Mexico and other countries, the entire area is private. There is no public land. So you're either going to go through someone's fence, probably illegally, and could get in trouble, or you're going to pay. And to find something in the middle, we'd spend the whole day and we'd find a power line road, and that power line road is the one spot that didn't seem private. And it had enough of a rock step that we thought no one without 35s could get up here. So yay, we found a campsite, but that wasn't every day. So then the iOverlander app is like, okay, there's three spots to stay in this next town. 2 of the reviews are bad. One of them, everyone says is great and the people are nice. Let's go there. So it was a really nice thing. And for the border crossings, the reason we look at it are a major border crossing. Some people would literally have an aerial photo from Google. They'd upload to this app. And then they'd start drawing on it saying, here's aduana, here's the police station, here's where you get your temporary import permit for your vehicle.
Step 1, step 2, step 3.
Yeah.
So a lot of times it was a lot of helpful information. And then it's crowdsourced, so like you can kind of read through the reviews and go, oh, that person was just unlucky and had a bad situation. the next 3, it was pretty easy. So it's been helpful.
Yeah, and then there are border crossings we went to, like the one, actually the video we just most recently posted going into Bolivia, no one had crossed there. So it was like, you're kind of on your own. So, but it's super helpful. So if you're crossing borders, I think the most intimidating part of doing a trip like this is the border crossings, and getting in and out of each country legally and okay. And so that app now makes it so much easier than the people 20, 30 years ago who had to get that person at the border to help you. And these people are tired. Almost every country is hot and humid that we're going through. They're not bustling to help you. You know what I mean? They're having a long day and they're dealing with a lot of people. And then a foreigner comes up who may not speak their language very well. It's much easier to just walk up and say, I know you need this form and 3 copies of this than it is to say, hi, walk me through it. It's really nice to have that info ahead of time.
Right. So you're talking about having specific forms ready, and the way that you learned from that is the app. Is there any other prep that you guys do to go across the border? I mean, do you set your rig up a certain way? Do you not carry certain foods, when you're going to be crossing a border? Is there, take me through the mindset as you're approaching a border and you know what you're going to be doing.
Before we left, or anytime we're in a major city, we'll get extra copies made of the things that are often asked for. So color copies of your passports, the title, the registration, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So we have a folder with all those. So if we can figure out from the app, we need 3 copies of this, 2 of this, 2 of this. Okay, great. We got all that together. Vehicle wise, we'll put more if we've got some cash or if we've got our cameras, we'll put them away a little deeper. We have a locking center console so we can lock them away. So we do kind of prep, and then we always go to border crossings in the morning if we can. In our mistakes video, that was one of the things we talked about. We screwed up once or twice, but every other border crossing, we show up in the morning. Sometimes it literally takes until the sun is setting. Other days, 20 minutes later, you're in the country and you go, that was amazing. So, but you don't know. And so we always go in the morning. And then we definitely have to work as a team. Like, okay, there's a ton of, border crossings for every country are a bit of a place where some shadier people hang out. So, okay, there's a lot of people hanging around our truck. You stay with the truck, I'll get us checked in. And so you have to act as a team to kind of know what you're going to do and what your plan of attack is. So.
Yeah, and each border is different. Like we said, some you are conscious of, don't take meats, don't take, dairy products and that sort of thing. Others, you don't have to worry about it. And usually if you don't know from, something like an Overlander, there's signs telling you can't have this, you can't have that. And you go, oh, I got to throw all that away. Mm-hmm. And then, some borders like Nicaragua, they didn't want drones coming through.
Yeah.
So we
super
made
serious
sure
to take a drone into Nicaragua. So yeah,
stuff
like
that away.
Yeah.
Were you able to hide it and have them not figure it out, or did you mail it home or?
Well, that was tough. So mail in all these countries, I mean, even friends who are in like Panama and these really developed cities are like, if I get something mailed from family or friends in the US, it's like less than 50-50 that we'll get it. It's like a 30% chance it'll ever show up. It'll just go into the black hole, And so mailing it around a country sounds perfectly reasonable when you think of like, oh, I can't take a drone into, Arizona. I'll just mail it from California to New Mexico and pick it up there. But it just doesn't work like that. And so, for us, good or bad, we pop the top. This is like a couple nights beforehand. We climb to the front of our pop top, and there's a little gap down there where the hinge is, where I bolted in the hinge, and we shoved the drone down there and decided we're not even going to look at it, touch it, anything until we reach a country where it's legal again. But we'd heard that they search trucks really well in Nicaragua. So we picked the biggest, fattest, sweatiest border guard and asked him to inspect the truck, because you have to find one of them to get to inspect your truck. And it was probably 100 degrees, 100% humidity. And he's walking around. We were all suffering. It sucked, middle of the day. And he just kind of looks inside and he goes, yeah, it's fine. I was like, oh my God. He goes, but sign here saying you don't have a drone. And you're like, wow. So if I sign this and I know I have that up there, you're inviting a bad situation. So we did, but I wouldn't advise it. I would say if you have some other method to get that around it, do it. Because that's sketchy. But then, of course, we're in Nicaragua. We're camping on the side of this lake that's actually a volcano caldera. And I would call him, you're from California, so I'd call him a California bro. The guys I'm talking about. He's there at the resort right next to us, and they're having beers. And he just takes his drone out and starts flying it all around in Nicaragua. And we're just going, oh my God, like, what are you doing? So but I don't think anything happened to him. So, but yeah, you got to be careful. And there's a lot more countries that have restrictions like that.
Yeah.
Most of the countries we went to didn't, but I think more are adding them over time. So.
And do they post these up so that you know beforehand?
If you go on Nicaragua's website, it was hard to find anything about drones. Once you find a page, there's info, but it's really hard. You have to seek it out. I didn't find that they're like, hey, just so you know. It's not like when you cross into a new state and they said, sometimes you see a sign saying hands-free, cell phone use only, and there's a helmet law, and like they kind of let you know, here are the differences. There's nothing like that. That's where iOverlander comes in really handy, because someone has said, by the way, this is really serious and you can't do this or this kind of a thing.
Right.
So.
And Kelsey, did you feel that, because I know that it's like the border crossing is like a train station, out here in the States, in a way that, like Tim was saying, that they are a little bit more shady characters out there. How did you deal with that as a woman in this situation, especially in these countries where, they're not, like, women aren't as equally treated, as men are, and and you had to sometimes deal with, controlling the situation, I'm sure. So how did you treat that?
It's definitely like an intimidating, place to be, especially like Central America. You have all the money changers and all the guys that are like, I'll help you, and so as you're pulling up, there's people at your window, like wanting you to, talk to them and give something to them. And so it's intimidating. But I think, the Latin culture definitely has, the male chauvinists, but I think as well, there's also heavy respect for a woman. So I kind of would just, even if I felt intimidated, just fake it, like, I'm not intimidated by you. And it always seemed to work. It would be funny, like someone would be bugging Tim for something. And if I just said no, and like, or why, and I'd be, because I said, like, I told him he can't or something, and they tended to really respect that when a woman came out and was like, don't do it. I'm telling you this now. I'm being very harsh with you. And that seemed to work pretty well. But not that I was, comfortable honestly, under the surface, but.
Yeah, she was like a secret weapon, though, dealing with police and things like that. We didn't have many instances at all of police wanting something from us, but the times we did, or like a border checkpoint or a police checkpoint or a military checkpoint, she said no, or she said we need to leave. They would kind of, yes, ma'am. Like they go into a different mode. And so it actually became a nice thing to kind of go like, okay, you need to like lean forward, and they see you sort of looking stern, and it really works. So it was kind of a funny thing that it was actually more effective to have her say something at times, especially if I had tried and they're like, come on, man, like buy this or change money with me or follow us or whatever it might have been.
Or even going up to a stranger if we were lost or, needed to know something, to go up and ask. And as a woman, going up to a police officer or something and asking a question, it seemed like they were more helpful a lot of times than if Tim would go up and do the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tricks of the trade right there. Good to know. So Overland, our overland journey also asked, what is the best place to visit as an overlander? And then he says, and why is it Baja?
I love it. Accurate statement. It's funny. So, open land is essential, I think, for overlanding, some public lands or some trails to be able to do. And a lot of this trip, there's a reason people have done trips like this, or the same Pan American in a tuk-tuk, or like the guy, I can't remember his name, Ben, but he did it in a convertible sports car with low profile tires, just to kind of show it could all be done. Bolivia and the whole deal. And it's not that hard technically. So to us, open land is important. Argentina has some amazing areas of open land in Altiplano, kind of in the high elevation. Bolivia has some amazing open areas where you can drive stuff that, just about the second highest road on earth of trail. So there's a lot of that. But then so much of the trip, you're just fence line on both sides, and you're going down a dirt road. And really, it's dirt roading. It's not off-roading. And so for us, we still do love Baja. And he's making reference to that sometimes we're asked, and I think, when you're down in South America or Central America and you talk to somebody and you talk about a place like Baja, they're like, oh, I've heard about it. I want to go. It's so remote and far off. When you're in Southern California, it's like Baja. It's not as cool because it's close. But if you ignore the proximity, it's still our favorite place on earth. You know, we got to spend like a week not leaving the beach. We had enough food and water and beer and tacos and all that, just to stay along the beach and camp each night. And I think there was at least a 5-day period where we didn't even see another human, no tire tracks. We found a section that was, you had to air down and have big tires to stay on the beach in this area, and it works. So we do love Baja, but I'd say kind of setting that aside, because I almost consider like Baja Mexico light, you know, or California plus, or I don't you know, I would say for me, off-roading, Bolivia was the craziest. The salt flats, the mountains. I mean, we drove to almost 19,000 feet.
Wow.
It's crazy. So that, you know, the Bolivian Death Road, all that kind of stuff. But every country has an off-road club, and if you get in touch with them, they'll find something crazy to go and explore. But I think Bolivia, if I had to choose one, Argentina was really good too. And then there were some countries that were just, the whole country felt pretty locked down. But again, if I was a local, it's just like somebody saying, oh, I went to Southern California and there was no wheeling. And then you're like, what about, you didn't know Ocotillo existed. You didn't know Glamis was there. You didn't know all
Johnson
kinds
Valley.
of stuff, right? So there's tons. It's just a matter of knowing where it's at. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's the most important part, is the open spaces, because then it's easier to find your own adventure. For a lot of, you know, the places that didn't have those open spaces, you're fighting to find some place that feels like your own. So
yeah.
Nice. I saw you went to the Nazca lines. Did you, I didn't actually have time to watch that segment that you guys had. Did you go up into the air and look down on them?
No, it was basically a big windstorm, dust storm, and we could see less than, I don't know, 100 yards. Maybe that's a bit dramatic, maybe 200 yards or something. But it was so bad and dusty that we looked up the prices. It's fairly expensive, but we were absolutely, I was dying to do it. I wanted to see the main ones and all the other newer ones they've discovered, or more identified, I guess. But it was just so bad at the time that it was one of those where it's kind of funny, because you look at your cell phone now and go, that's what I'll be seeing, you know? And so you're there, and we did get to see some from the towers you can climb up to. But at the time, it was just one of those that, I don't know, it wasn't a priority somehow. Like we looked at them on satellite view, and I went, that's a better view even than the plane. Let's just keep cruising. So
yeah, the whole area was just a neat desert. And I think we were just enjoying, I mean, you know, that the Nazca lines are obviously really cool, but we were just enjoying the whole experience of that desert, that area.
Yeah. And we found there were some good trails you could do that were, you know, just kind of off in the middle of nowhere. And then I always prefer just a random dirt road to like any touristy or city thing. And so once we kind of did that, the next morning it was like, do you want to drive back north and try again, or nah? No, we were satisfied. Let's keep cruising.
Right. And when you guys were up at elevation, did you have coca tea?
Yeah. So it was interesting. So like in the towns, they have the coca candy, they have the coca leaves. Anytime you see
coca bread.
Yeah, coca bread. I mean, everything, right?
Yeah.
And some people we were traveling with had already gotten the coca leaves. And so one morning before a big hike, we made the tea. And it was interesting. We didn't have coffee that day, and we have coffee every morning. And so it was more like, I feel like this is like coffee plus. It wasn't that extreme, but it felt like just a bump. And you went, okay, you know, like, I guess bumps.
So I've been to Peru, and I went to Cusco and Machu Picchu, and flew from Lima, which is like sea level, and 45 minutes later you're at Cusco, which is like 11,000 feet.
Yeah.
You know, and you step off the airplane and you're just like, whoa, what happened? You know, and they're there giving you coca tea. And you know, and I just say it's like a really caffeinated high in a way. And that's really all.
It's not any big deal.
Yeah, I actually really liked it. You know, I thought it was good. And
if people didn't turn it into something else, the leaf should be absolutely legal. It's not a big deal. But when we did that drive up to like 19,000 feet, we had the candies. We didn't want to like make tea or anything. And it was good, because at 15, 16,000, I'm higher than I've ever been in my life. And you're going, I don't feel so good. And this is a shelf road that, you know, we passed the point where the tour groups stop. And I could tell that, you know, with a locker, you could make it further. And so I was kind of possessed to get a little higher than other people. I was like, yeah, let's go. And you're just worried, because you're like, the cliff's right there, my foot slips, anything. I need to be completely present. But of course, at that elevation, you're not, you know. And so those little coca candies, we popped a few of those. And anytime we started feeling more like groggy or out of it, pop another one, and got us back down the mountain. So yeah, stuff like that was actually a nice thing to be able to deal with it.
Yeah, definitely. I remember when I was down there, well, here in the United States, right, we have Mount Whitney, which is like 14,300 feet roughly,
Yeah.
you know, and that's in the 48, lower 48. That's the tallest point for the United States. And when I was younger, I used to do a ton of rock climbing and mountaineering. And though I never did summit Whitney, or at least not yet. But then I went down to Peru, and on a bus, I went over like a 15,000 foot pass. And I'm I was sitting down in a bus, and I went higher than any place I've ever been in the United States.
And then on the bus, you just be like, I did it.
Right?
I'm so proud.
Yeah, exactly.
It's crazy. I mean, it's all those elevations seem so extreme here. And like Imogene Pass is over 13, I think it is, or high 12s. I can't remember. Yeah. And that's like just mind blowing. And then you're right. You'll be on a toll road and you'll be at 15,000 or something. So the elevations are crazy.
Right. Yeah. And so I was like, we went from Cusco to Lake Titicaca and then hung out all around there. And for like a week, we were above 10,000 feet.
Yeah.
You know, and that's like, you can't really do that unless you're living at that elevation here in the States.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yep.
Let's say Kip Moto asks, any plans to come back to Canada?
Yes, we do. It's tough because all of the events that were going to take us some places and then we were going to explore some more kind of got canceled. So we were going to work the BC Overland Rally, and then we had a month until the next event. It was the 1 month I think we had off this year, and we were going to go up into Canada, maybe even into Alaska, and explore a lot more. So, but we want to go up there and visit and explore some more. It's just right now, any work we can find, that's dictating where we're going to go, because we're just focused on saving for the next trip. We want to build the channel. We want to keep making videos and make them better. But you know, we got to save for the next trip, because any country we're going to go to, we can't legally earn money there, except, you know, YouTube, which is really earning it sort of back home. And so yeah, we're just in saving mode. So we hope we'll make it to Canada.
Yeah, we'd love to. We have a lot of friends up there that we want to visit and love to explore some more. So hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. Such a beautiful country and area too out that way.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads into the next question. What is next for the channel? What's going to happen? Can you give us any secret insights?
Well, the big secret is we got to catch up. So you know, it's just so many hours, you know, it's so I think living in a truck is like half a full-time job, sort of, you know, because it just takes longer to do everything, maintaining the truck and finding a place to camp each night, because we move a lot almost every night. So that's like takes up a lot of your week. Then now we're working full-time when we have jobs to work, you know, for this government contractor. And so that's a full-time for each of us. And then the videos, definitely for her, is a full-time job editing. So she's putting in just under 40, I think, hours sitting at the computer. But then you got to shoot the videos and all that, right? So you know how it is. It's more than I think a lot of people know. So for us, we need to catch up, and we're trying as much as we can to get caught up. And there's some amazing stuff coming up. I can't wait to edit. And as of today, now I'm editing more too.
Yes.
I got my own computer today. So my own used Apple computer, really old Apple. But so that's the plan. And then the next country for us, we don't know, because if we save a little, we're up for doing something like motorcycles in Cambodia. So that's something I've wanted to do, and some buddies have done that we met on the trip. They're from Germany, and I'd like to go and do that as well. We could do, I don't know, Australia is really high on the list. We've met a ton of friends that are from there, and we have so many people now that we just want to go see and visit. And that would sort of encompass New Zealand as well, because there's some friends there. Africa is obviously got to be on the list, and we love it. And so it kind of depends how much we save, and then, you know, who we're going to go and stay at their house in this country, or use their workshop to build a truck if we don't take Goose. So it's kind of going to be, it's going to sort itself out, I think, depending on.
We're trying to be open to opportunities and kind of what leads, but, you know, we have a lot of ideas, but no firm plans yet.
I think that for us, the focus right now is we did sell off our life and we quit our jobs, but not everything. You know, we did think it was a 1-year trip. And so we kept a couch, and we kept a armoire and this and stuff. I don't even know why we're paying to store it. So we're here back in Tucson to go through the storage unit, sell everything. You know, I don't need a chainsaw sitting in a storage unit for 5 years or something. So all that kind of stuff we're putting up for sale. And then we might sell some of the vehicles too. That depends, you know. Sure, in an ideal world, we'd have an airplane hangar with them all parked in there, but that's not reality for us. So, so we're just figuring it all out. But
got it. Yeah, one of the big joys about traveling the world and going to different places and is meeting new people. And then, and while you're traveling and, you're both kind of experiencing some of the same things and you become pretty friendly with each other very fast.
Yeah.
I've been to many places around this world and, it's like I can go to almost any country and go like, oh, I know somebody that lives here, and it's kind of fun to, try and meet up with them at some point. So I have a really good friend of mine who's German, and we've ran into each other in Amsterdam. We've ran into each other in China. We've ran into each other, in California, and it's, it's just all over the world. And we seem to like, hey, where are you going at this time? I want to, let's hang out, and go somewhere. Cool. So
it is. It's a family that you start to develop. That's something that we didn't know we'd sort of have going on by the time this trip ended. But it's one of our favorite parts is now there's so many countries that people say, hey, come on, you got to come and visit and I'll show you around. So that's probably one of the coolest things. Definitely.
All right. Well, I want to give you guys a moment to shine. Why don't you guys promote what you've got going, all your channels, where people can contact you or check you guys out, and tell people all about you.
Cool. Yeah, we have our YouTube channel, which is Dirt Sunrise, and on Instagram, Dirt Sunrise. And if you Google Dirt Sunrise,
you'll find all of it. The webpage, dirtsunrise.com, at least has links for everything on there. We sell stickers and things like that, and that helps support the trip. And as Patreon grows, that's been a huge thing to support sort of being able to do just the traveling part and get better equipment and all that. Mm-hmm. So we kind of have a little bit of all those things going on. But Instagram's probably the best for following us more live. I'll just try and post something of our day almost every day.
Yeah, and then YouTube is, our travels in South America, and we're catching up to current. And we're trying to, we're working on more interviews with some of the people we've met on the road, as well as like, tips and tricks of traveling and how-tos, that sort of thing. So
yeah.
That's good. I need some of that info. So yeah, definitely. All right. Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for hanging out. I thought that was a great conversation between, world traveling and off-roading. So it was a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.